Hi, this is Dr. Murti with your Week 5 video lecture for our Thursday, November 24th class, which of course we're not meeting for because it's Thanksgiving. Before I begin, I just want to let you know that I learned the hard way yesterday in making a video lecture for my other course that YouTube will not accept any videos more than 15 minutes or so in length. So I may have to split up this video lecture into 2, possibly 3, but I anticipate no more than 2 15-minute video lectures. So I apologize for that, but I will let you know when I'm reaching 15 minutes on here and when I have to stop. All right, so let's begin. Let's begin with just a little bit of talking about the past so we can orient and ground ourselves for this week. As you know from my announcement and email and possibly your Blackboard grade report as well, the annotated bibliographies are graded, and do let me know if you have any questions or concerns about your grade or my feedback on those, because of course you will be drawing from your annotated bibliographies for your literature review. Your Week 3 discussion board posts on the motivations behind your proposed research should be graded by midnight tonight, and I will announce on Blackboard when I have those done. Also, even though we only had time in class to workshop these last week, Anna and I will still happily look at your drafts of your introduction and your literature review, especially if you didn't get to workshop them with me last week during the Week 4 class. And I am happy to talk to you about your progress on the interview assignment, even though we're not meeting for class this week. Just send me an email if you have any questions or concerns. And then looking ahead to next week, your Week 4 discussion board posts on the methodology you've selected are due by 5:30 p.m. tomorrow, Thanksgiving, Thursday, November 24th. So you might just want to have them done tonight so you can enjoy Thanksgiving without having to worry about that. And a full draft of the literature review, as you know, is due to me as an email attachment by midnight this Saturday, November 26th. I would strongly urge you to include a draft of your introduction with that too, especially if we didn't get to workshop it in class last week. And I can look at that in addition to your literature review. Remember, this isn't for a grade, this is just for my feedback to help you in developing your proposal. What is due for a grade by next week, the Week 6 class, is your interview assignment, of course, which we talked about last week. The instructions are posted on Blackboard. What's also due, not for a grade, however, but for workshopping in class, is the methodology section of your proposal. That's what we'll be talking about today in this video lecture. And your Week 5 discussion board is due by 5:30 p.m. next Thursday, December 1st. Remember, 3 posts for full credit. For this week's discussion board post, you need to analyze research reported in a news study. As you know, the news is always talking about new studies that show something else, usually regarding our health, but regarding other aspects of life and society as well. This week's discussion board post asks you to look into one of these media reports and write about how well you think the report has done in reporting research. Did they fudge the facts? Did they stay true to the actual research and not mislead? These are the kinds of questions you'll be answering. However, the Week 5 discussion board post asks you to look up the original research study that the news study draws from. That's optional. You can do it if you'd like, if it helps you answer the questions better for the discussion board, but it's not required. If you have any questions or concerns about this, let me know by email. Okay, so sorry I keep getting this message on my computer, and I'm procrastinating on that, so I'll do that later. What I want to talk to you about primarily in this video lecture is your methods section, which you are drafting for the Week 6 class meeting. Here in this slide and the next is an outline of everything you must include in your methods section and the order in which you must include it. I am going to post these PowerPoint slides under week 5 on our course Blackboard site, so you can go through them at your pace as well. And I would encourage you to especially concentrate on this slide and the next one. You may want to have it up as you're writing your methods section, so you can be sure to include all of these things in your methods section and in this order. So the first thing you need to write about in your methods section are your participants, and as we'll be talking about in further slides, you must talk about the participants in terms of the criteria they must meet to be in your study, how you will locate them, the size of your sample, how many participants will be included in your study, and your method of sampling. Will it be random sampling, snowball sampling, convenience or accidental sampling, cluster sampling, or multi-stage sampling? And I will talk about what all of this means in just a few minutes. Also in your methods section, you need to have a subsection on instrumentation, or measurement is really what this is. This is explained in the pattern book in section G. I'm going to explain it as well in these slides. In other words, how are you collecting your data? Are you going to use semi-structured interviews, participant observation, non-participant observation, published instruments, or your own new instrument that you create? How are you going to collect demographic information, and what demographic information are you going to collect? I have demographics italicized and in bold because this is important. This is required. You may not write about all of the other things above demographics in this outline. There's no way you're going to be able to do all of these things, I would imagine, in your methods or in your proposed research. You'll probably just choose 1 or 2 of these things, but in all of your research proposals, you must talk about demographics in relation to your proposed research. So that's why that's in bold-faced and italics. And you must also discuss the ethical issues that come about in your research. So let's talk about all of this in more detail. Participants, as Patton says on page 63, participants technically are voluntary. That means you tell them about your study beforehand and they consent to participate, knowing what the study is all about. Subjects, however, are not voluntary. They become part of the study without knowing it. That may happen in non-participant observation, when you're just observing a crowd or a bunch of people in a public setting and they don't know you're observing them and studying them. Then they're subjects, not participants. Respondents are usually those who take a survey. They're usually called respondents. So if you're doing a survey for your proposed research, then you will refer to the people who take your survey as respondents. So that's a bit about terminology. After you tell us basically who your participants are going to be, whether they're going to be and whether they're going to be participants, subjects, or respondents, you need to tell us more specifics. That is, the criteria that your participants must meet to be included in your study. There's a good example of this on page 65 in the patent text. You want to be as specific as possible. So in the patent text, they talk about a study on new teachers. Well, you need to tell us how specifically you're defining new teachers. What criteria must a teacher meet to be considered new and to be part of your study? The example given on page 65, for example, says, criteria for participant selection will be as follows. The teacher participants must be fully credentialed and in their first or second year of teaching at the elementary level in a large urban school district. They will be selected without regard to gender. However, it is anticipated that there will be more females than males in the sample because the teaching profession at the elementary level is female-dominated. So look at all the criteria discussed there, all the specific criteria. You will be doing the same in talking about your participants in your study. So look at that example. It's a good one. Also, you need to tell us how and where you will find the participants for your study. How are you going to locate them? The example in the book says to find new teachers, you might telephone elementary school principals throughout an urban school district and request their cooperation in identifying teachers who meet your criteria. So in other words, how are you going to identify your participants to make sure they meet the criteria for this study? Next, you need to tell me, in general, your sample size. How many participants or subjects or respondents will take part in your study? You have to put some thought into this. Can't just think up of a random number that you like, right? You need to think of the time involved in taking up this study. In most cases, a larger sample size means you need more time to complete the study, especially if you're doing qualitative research, such as interviews. You want to keep your sample small because interviews take a long time. If you're doing surveys, especially anonymous surveys, then your sample size may be really large. If you're doing a quantitative study, then your sample size could be really large. If you're doing a controlled experiment, maybe your sample size is going to be smaller. So all of these things help determine the number of participants or subjects or respondents in your study. Take those things into account. Also take resources into account. It takes money, not only time, it takes space. It takes legwork to do a research study. So think about that as well in deciding on your sample size. And also, again, go back to the peer-reviewed research articles that you collected for your annotated bibliography and your literature review. Look at the sample size of similar research and see how many people they involved. Chances are you'll want to involve just about as many people if you're pursuing very similar research. And of course, you can always ask me, you can ask your classmates, you can ask Anna what we think a good sample size would be for your study. Moving right along, the book gives you several methods for sampling, and you'll need to possibly read about these more to really understand them and decide which method of sampling will work best for your study. The first method of sampling they present is random. Ideally, in a study that's not qualitative, you will do random sampling because it ensures the least amount of bias in picking your sample. In fact, it should be completely unbiased, as in you're closing your eyes and drawing from a hat, which includes all who meet your criteria for participants. So all you know about the participants is that they all meet your criteria. And beyond that, you're not using anything else to select them. It's a totally random selection. That's not always possible, though. So sometimes you have to go with a sampling frame and limit yourself to those participants who are accessible to you. Let's see what the book says about that. And I'm going to end this recording here. We'll pick up with this slide in a new video recording. I'm going to take this time to go back to the book to look at their explanation of a sampling frame to explain that further in my next video. Okay, so I'm ending this video here, and I will pick up where I left off in a new video. See you soon.